Okay, so it is time for a little How To Tuesday. We're going to discuss how to do the alternating diagonal rib. For those of you who don't know who I am Aradia Noir. I'm the resident witch and creatrix over at Aradia's Hand, where I create myth, magic, and meaning for your everyday life. And on this wonderful how-to video, we're going to talk about how to do the alternating diagonal rib. This is for the use in making a swatch for a specific pattern. I've already sorted out the pattern instructions, sorted out the amount of cast on and the stitches per row. I've got it written out, and we're going to go ahead through it. Now, first of all, of course, we need our yarn and the needles that we're going to be using. I happen to be using a worsted weight for the purposes of this sample. The pattern uses 2 strands of DK, which is very close to worsted. So we're going to call it good. And this is a US 9, which is a 5.5 millimeter, which is also the needle size incidentally used for the pattern. But after that, of course, you would want a pair of scissors. You would want a measuring tape or something to measure your gate, your swatch with. For the purposes of this, I just want to demonstrate how to do the stitch pattern itself. Because this is a sample, I will not be washing or blocking it, so that is immaterial. And this is Lily's Sugar and Cream Cotton in Tea Rose, if I recall correctly. So I'm going to be using the long tail cast on, and I'm creating a slip knot to start. And if you would like to know how to do either of those things, you can check out my videos. They'll be linked in the description box below, so we can not take up any time. And for the purposes of this, we'll be casting on 51 stitches. So I've been counting this whole time, but I like to count again to make sure I've got the right amount of stitches. As you can see, this cast on is pretty big, and that's because the pattern mirrors itself, and so we have to have the right amount of stitches to do one full section and then another full section with the border stitches on either side and the intermediate stitches in between. So okay, so we got 51 stitches, which generally speaking, swatches are usually about 18 to 24 stitches. And if we were just doing 1/2 of this design, then that would be about what we would use. But again, for the purposes of making this accurate, we're going to do it this way. Now, what I will say, this first part of the pattern is worked over the course of 10 rows, but it is actually an 8-row repeat. The first 2 rows are setup rows, which is very common. And so to continue the pattern effect, you will be working rows 3 through 10 over and over again until you get to the desired length. And so there we go. And this, technically speaking, this this pattern is, the pattern itself would be (43 stitches plus 8, and the 8 is the beginning 4 and the end 4. Technically speaking, that's how it would be translated. And just for those who don't know, I'm going to be knitting combination my way. So however you knit, wherever you place the stitches is fine. In this particular pattern, it does not specify, but just so we're all clear. And if you'd like to see that video, I'll link it below in the description box. So we're going to knit 4, and we start and end with a knit 4, and that forms the border of this. Because a lot of stitches that are cabled or lace or whatnot, you don't start the stitch pattern at the very edge of the work on either side. So a lot of times you will see border stitches. So when you're looking at a stitch multiple, understand that sometimes that's what those extra plus stitches are. Is to make sure that the stitches work out mathematically each side. So our next instruction is to purl 2, knit 2 5 times, and that's going to form our first diagonal section. Excuse me. Okay, so I'll also put the pattern instructions for the swatch itself also in the description below. So we've done our purl 2, knit 2 5 times. Now we're going to knit 3, and this knit 3 forms the border between one diagonal and the other, so they don't make a completed chevron. And now to work the next section, you will be working in reverse that you just did. So instead of purl 2, knit 2, it's going to be knit 2, purl 2 5 times. And that is what you would do to mirror something. And now we're back to our last border, which is another knit 4. So you've now done your first of your 2 setup rows, and you'll notice that the stitches following this will be a little looser, and that's because my cast on was a bit tight. And so the second row and all even rows are worked thusly. You will knit 4 and then knit all the knit stitches, purl all those purl stitches as they appear to the last 4 stitches, and then you will knit those last 4. And the knitting of those first and last 4 will give this a garter stitch edge. Garter stitch is often used in borders and edging because it has a tendency to lay flat. So and a lot of times when people swatch, they will use a garter stitch border. Use stockinette and reverse stockinette curl. And when it says to knit all the knits and purl all the purls, this is where you need to really be able to read your knitting and be able to recognize that, hey, that little V right there means that that's a knit, and these little bumps right here mean that those are purls. You can see the stitches work a lot easier now that they've been worked once. I will say it has been a really long time since I've worked on long straight needles, so forgive my clumsiness. And we're to our last 4, so we're going to knit those, ending with a garter stitch border again. Alright, so as I said, these are our 2 setup rows, and the reason I say that is because if you look in the instructions in the pattern, which I will link to as well below, when you get to the 10th row, it tells you to work rows 3 through 8 for the pattern. So the whole purpose of this is to set those stitches up where you want them, because this is called a diagonal rib because these stitches are offset to one another, and so you have to establish the stitches to begin with to then make them offset. So we're on to row 3 now, which is a knit 4, and then we're going to purl 2 together. And this purling here is what is going to make the stitches be offset. Okay, so you've gotten rid of one of the stitches, which is moved the stitches over, and now we will be knit 2, purl 2 4 times. And now we're going to knit 2. And now we need to account for that stitch that we've taken off earlier in the round by making 1, and we're going to make 1 purl. So to purl, we want to move the yarn into the front of the work, and then to make 1, we're going to lift that bar between from front to back, and if you go front to back, you will be working in the back of the stitch. If you go back to front, then you will be working in the front of the stitch. And the difference between those is, sorry for the little hiccup, if you go from the back to front, you'll be make 1 right. If you go from front to back, when you are inserting the needle under the bar, then you are making 1 left. In any case, whichever one you want to use is fine. For the purposes of purling, since I purl in the front, I'm going to make 1 right. So go in to the back, under the bar, from the back to the front, and I'm going to purl. We've just made 1. And I will also link to a video for making 1 right and making 1 left, both knit and purl, included in the same video so that you can see what it looks like. And I'll link to those below as well. So we've made 1 right. Now we need to knit 3. Okay, and then we're going to have to make 1 right purl again. So again, we're purling, which means we move the yarn to the front, and we're going to make 1 right, so we go from the back to the front. And if you have trouble remembering, think of it this way: you will be right back, right? And now we're going to go the other half of the diagonal section, which will be a knit 2, purl 2 4 times. And now the next instruction is to knit 2, then we will purl 2 together, and then to knit the last 4. So as with the second row, the 4th row, you will knit 4. You will work all of the knits knitted and purl all the purls. And this is really common when you do a lot of lace patterns as well. The wrong side, when it's worked flat, will be just work the stitches as they are. And all the make ones, I'm working them as if they are knitted, because if it was a make one purl, on the opposite side it would correspond to a knit. Okay, so we're now to our last 4, and remember we want that garter stitch border, so we will knit those last 4. Dropping needles. So as you can see, you can kind of see some of the ribbing taking effect now. Again, remember that this is with 2 setup rows. So right now it doesn't look like it's diagonal at all. We've only done 2 of the rows that are part of the actual pattern repeat. So we're on the 5th row, and we're going to again start with our knit 4. And now we're going to knit 2 together and then knit 1. And then we're going to purl 2, knit 2 4 times. And actually, what I will do to make this a little easier on me, let's move that over there. There we go. And now we're going to purl 1, make 1, knit 3, make 1, and purl 1. So we will purl 1. And because we are making 1 here, what we will do is we will make 1 left, and I will knit. Or yeah, make 1 right. No, I'm sorry, make 1 right, and then we'll knit. So we'll go from right, oops, right to front, and then insert in the front of the stitch or the loop that's been made. And then we're going to knit 3. Again, we're going to make another 1. So we're going to go right, back, and some people find the make 1 left for knitting easier because you work into the back of the stitches. But really it is your choice what you want to do when it does not specify. So we've made 1 right, and we're going to go back to do our purl 1. And then we're going to knit 2, purl 2 4 times. Now we're going to knit 1, knit 2 together, and then we got our last 4 stitches to knit. And so again, we're on an even row, so we're going to start with our knit 4, and then we're going to work all the stitches as they are, and then knit 4 at the end of the row as well. And then we're to our last 4 stitches, so we'll knit those. Now we're on to the 7th row. And we will start with a knit 4, then there's going to be a knit 2 together. We'll knit these 2 together. And then we will purl 2, knit 2 4 times. To purl 2, we will make 1 right, or yeah, make 1 right. This is knitwise. I'm going to knit 3. Make 1 right again. And we'll purl 2. And then we'll knit 2, purl 2 4 times. We're going to purl 1. Number 7 on me. Yep. So pardon me. I'm going to looks like we've got a little mistake here, so we'll go back to our middle portion, right, which is right in here. Okay, and we've got 1, 2, 3. This is supposed to be 4. Alright, so we have I think I lost my place, friends. It looks like we are in fact on row 7, so my apologies on that. We'll end with a knit 2 together. And then knitting our 4. And so now we're on to row 8. Row 8, as with all the even number rows, work 4 knitwise. And then you will knit all the knits, purl all the purls. Oh, sorry about that. We got our last 4, and we're going to knit those. So now it's time for row 9, and we are going to knit 4, purl 2 together, and then purl 1. Purl 2 together. Purl 1. And then we will knit 2, purl 2 4 times. Then we will knit one, make one. Again, we're going to make one right. Knit three. Make another one right. I'm going to knit one. Now we're going to purl two, knit four, knit two, excuse me, 4 times. And we will purl one, oops, knit 2 together, and then knit the 4. So now we're coming up on our 10th. Coming up on our 10th row, and like all the even numbers, of course, worked knit 4, work stitches as they are, knit, knit, purl, purl, and then work 4 at the end, knitwise. And this will be the first section repeated, which will be the 2 setup rows, and then the first 8 row repeat. And what I'll do is I will work more so that you can see, because there's absolutely something that's forming here, and you can see that right in the middle. Notice when I'm not sure about whether a stitch has been needs to be worked, knitted, or purled, I will flip it to the back of the other side of the work to see what it looks like. So for most people, knits are very distinguishable. Sometimes a purl, it's harder to see. And then we're going to do our last 4 stitches. So we're going to knit those. And that is our row 10. So as you can see, and it's this fabric is a little loose, but if you look, is it's starting to go diagonal off in these directions, and these bits right here are starting to disappear. So one of the things I can say is about a lot of stitch patterns, if you just work if it's like a 10 row repeat and you just work 10 rows, you may not be able to see much of anything. But if I do 10 more and then 10 more after that, the pattern will become a lot clearer. So as you can see, it is beginning. What I'm going to do is go ahead and continue working this probably for at least another 20 rows. 16, excuse me, because it's an 8 row repeat. But I'm going to continue working this for another 16 to maybe 24 rows, so that you can really clearly see what it looks like. And then I will include a picture in the Patreon post, which I will put in the link so that you can see the rest of this. And that post will also be public. But in the interest of not having a video that is too long, I'm going to go ahead and cut this here, because my whole purpose was to let you see how the swatches worked. And yes, this is a giant swatch, but honestly, bigger is better when it comes to swatches, because the bigger the swatch, the more of an idea you can get how the fabric is going to behave. And then, you know, do you like the drape? Did you like the stitch definition based on the yarn that you're using and the needle and everything like that? So I wish you well. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions about this stitch pattern, go ahead and leave a comment below. Again, I'm going to link to all those other tutorials for you so that you can easily do the make one, right, left, both knit and purl. I'll link to the cast on that I used and the slip knot, and I'll also go ahead and show you a knit 2 together and a purl 2 together video as well, so you can see what those look like. And there'll be a little more information in those videos, not just how to do them, but why you would do them. So I hope that you enjoy and you have a wonderful day. Happy knitting!